ways, and God used them in significant ways. John Piper wrote a really powerful book called Let the Nations Be Glad, The Supremacy of God in Missions. And I have one more. Elisabeth Elliot, I already mentioned Elisabeth Elliot. She's written a lot of books about her husband and those that died in Ecuador. She wrote a missionary biography about a lady named Amy Carmichael. Anyone ever hear of Amy Carmichael? And this is called A Chance to Die. And so if you wanted to borrow one of these books, please come and talk to me after, just so I know who has what. I do have 3 books to give away, and I'll hope to mention them at the end. How can I support international missions? These are these little books from 9 marks. I hope that 3 of you will take it and read it and help our church be a better mission-sending church. Okay, so what you have in your, hopefully, did everybody get a sheet when you walked in? If you didn't, please raise your hand. Could a few helpful men in the back keep your hand raised, and let's get the sheets to those that did not get them. We should have plenty of sheets for everybody. And on this sheet, you will have a list of our missionaries, and you will have some notes that I'm going to just go through this morning with you on the second half of it, the bottom side of it. You have Faith Missionaries' phone and WhatsApp information. I will encourage you, if you want to, and I encourage you to do this, do you know that you can reach out on a regular basis to your missionaries from Faith Church, all of them? Just a simple message if you have a smartphone. I would encourage you to get WhatsApp app for your phone if you don't already have it. I never used it until I went to Cameroon, and then I realized when everybody was constantly coming to me and says, do you have WhatsApp? And so I eventually got it, and I learned that all of our missionaries use WhatsApp. If any of our missionaries who are on the field, they use it because it's such a helpful tool, and you just basically plug in their phone number and put it into your contacts, and then it becomes a contact for WhatsApp, and you can use that to reach out to all of them. I just want to walk you through them because I don't want to assume that you know who all our missionaries are. There are some missionaries I don't know well because they're retired, and so first of all, I want to ask, do you know who this couple is? Oh, okay, Diane, who's this couple? Thank you, Ernie and Minoka Brown. Where were they serving? I believe in Mexico, right? No, but that's where the Joneses were? So they are a retired missionary. They live in Ohio. And you won't hold that against them? And so I get their newsletter regularly, and they sent this is their phone number. You have it on the list, Ernie and Minoka Brown. We support them at a small level because we supported them for many, many years, and they were part of a mission where they did not have a lot for retirement, and we want to continue to help encourage them and support them and pray for them. You know who this is? This is kind of an old picture. Frank and Joan Jones. We're going to have an update from them this Wednesday, Lord willing, and they are also mostly retired, but have a ministry as well, and they live in the Detroit area, and you have their contact information on here. Do you know who this family is? Anybody know who this family is? Okay, the Brunos. And this is actually Katie, the wife here, is my sister, and Chris, and they live now where? They live in Hawaii. And you have both of their numbers here. This is a little bit of an older picture because their kids are getting a lot bigger, and their oldest is at Wheaton College right now. And he is involved in a seminary in helping train pastors for the islands. Do you know who this is? Tom Steller. What does Tom Steller do? What's that? Something in Cameroon. He teaches. Does he live in Cameroon? No, he doesn't live in Cameroon. Where does he live? He's in Minneapolis. And we're going to have a video update from him on Wednesday as he shares he either needs to have most of or all of his pancreas removed. It's a pretty big deal. He does not have cancer, they think, but he has some other serious health issues. And he's such a godly man. He's been a mentor in my life, and he is praying and hoping he can go back to Cameroon as soon as possible. But his summer and fall trips were canceled because of his health. Do you guys know who this is? Okay. We just met them or saw them again 2 weeks ago. Timothée, otherwise known as Tim or Timothy, and Abby DeVee and their son. Do you remember his son's name? Calvin. And I heard that they got the green light from their mission. They're over 80% now. They can start making process for making plans, booking tickets, they both have visas, 10-year visa to go to Cameroon, but their son doesn't, because their son was born since then, so they need to get a visa for their son, which is a permission slip basically from the Cameroonian government that they can come there to Cameroon. So they hope to go in January. Who's this family? Brian and Heather. What is special about this family compared to all of the other missionaries? Correct. They are members of our church. And so today I didn't have it broken down by what each missionary gets supported by, how much they get supported by. This missionary family, Brian and Heather and Phoebe, they get supported at a whole different level. They are members of our church. We are their sending church. Every missionary should have a sending church, a church that they're a member of and is their home church and sends them and is in many ways their spiritual authority more than their mission board that sends them. Each of these missionaries are part of a missions agency. They're part of Training Leaders International. So is Tom, Training Leaders International. So is Chris. Do you know the mission board that was a Baptist Mid-Mission or no? You think so? Okay. And then you guys know who this couple is. We had them last fall. Yep, Kel and Deb McMaster. What country are they in? They're in Brazil. And they are involved with church planting and pastoring work in Brazil. They've been there a long time. And Cal didn't really grow up in this church because his dad planted this church when Cal was pretty much leaving the home. So he was almost grown up by that time. And so they come to the States each year for a portion of the time. They have a lot of kids and grandkids in this region. Okay, do you know who this couple is? Dieudonné and Dominique. They are not formal missionaries in that we don't support them financially, but we pray for them and care for them. And how have we got to know them? Okay, yep, because of Brian. And they work, Brian, he's a pastor of the church and leader of the seminary where Brian is part of. Okay, do you know who this family is? What's that? Ferrans. Do you know where the Ferrans are? What's that? Close, but not in England. They go to England sometimes. They live in Portugal, and they are with a mission agency called ABWE, and they are in it now. They were in Africa. They're now there as, I don't remember the exact title, but in some ways they're in charge of, they're the supervisor of all the missionaries of that agency in Europe. And so part of their jobs is to hold them accountable, but to encourage them, to find out if they're doing good and how they can help them spiritually. And so that's what they're doing now. In some ways, he's in a sense, like a pastor to missionaries. But their home base is in Portugal. Do you know who this guy is? I guess it would be if you're looking at it, the left. Who's that? Okay, David Livingston, I presume. And where are they? They're in India. How do you like their hoodies? We sent those hoodies over. As you can see, those are, you got Faith logo. I have a hoodie like that, and he was like, "Can you please get me one of those? And I want your logo." So he asked for, I think, 12 of them for all his pastors that he is planting there. And this is a picture, I think, a year or two ago. Do you know who this couple is? Mike and June Bradley. And what country are they in? They're in England. Mike Whitehead was there last December, was it? For a work trip, and he went up to his church for the weekend and got to see the Bradleys. And they're close to retiring, I believe, and they're with the mission agency ABWE. Here's a picture of last summer. This is Bethlehem Seminary in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and I was there with Mike Whitehead and Jim Thompson and my daughter Grace, and this was a picture with seminary students, and both from the Minneapolis that were visiting and their students there that just graduated this last May. And here's a picture from 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I guess. I was with Paul and Elijah, and you can see Timotei and Abby, and that's when we actually met them. They were visiting there on a scouting trip, in a sense, to say, is God leading us to Cameroon? And the answer was they believe yes. And so that is where they're headed, hopefully in January or February. When we go to Cameroon, one of the things that we do is we do a pastors' conference. This is a group of pastors. And this picture includes about, I forgot the exact number. I think it's in the number of 30s. I think 30-some tribes. In Africa, if you're a native African from Cameroon, you will say, most of them will speak French, at least in Yaoundé, and all of them will say they're from a tribe. And that tribe is that of certain groups of family which speaks a particular dialect, a language that's very different than French. It's an African language. And so there's probably, so that means there's at least 34 languages represented there. And they in the home, that's what they speak. That's in some ways their heart language. And yet, because you can't have and function in a society with 70 languages, they took the European language that when they were settled or colonized, and French is the dominant language in a lot of parts of Africa. Okay. I wanted to start by just bringing you that, because I just don't, we want to make it an effort to do a better job of regularly letting you know about our missionaries, and part of that is your responsibility to pursue them and help us to get to better know them. And on this sheet of paper, you now have all of the contact information. I didn't give you emails, you can get those, but if you have WhatsApp, you can literally punch in their number, add it to your contact with the name, get WhatsApp, and you can send them a message. Tell them who you are. You can leave a voice message. You can send them a picture. You can just text them a message like you would a cell phone text, and you can start communicating, asking them how you can pray for them. Tell them who you are, what church you're from, and that you're praying for them. And that's one way in which you can get to know them. You can ask them for their email, or you can give them your email so that you can go, almost all of them will have a regular, often monthly newsletter, and you can get that, and they'll put your email on that newsletter. Diane. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 Just if you're on, yeah, I know that I've been communicating with Riker, and he's on WhatsApp, and so is Jacob. And who is the third? Oh, Kelsey was too, and Ethan. And so it's a way in which you can communicate. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to do in the remainder, I want to start. Any other questions? Is there any questions? I know this was just a really quick overview, but I wanted to just put some faces with our missionaries. Any questions? Okay, what I want to do is I want to remind you of a time that, well, remind you or bring to you for the first time some points that Brian brought to us in 2019. How many of you remember when Brian came here in 2019? That was his first furlough, and he shared with us, it was probably during the Sunday school hour, because that's actually a picture of him doing that. I looked up in my records because I happened to take pictures. And this was him, and can you tell what he's holding? It's hard to tell from that picture. What? It's not a little card. What, Ethan? It's a cup. It is a cup. It's a little cup. And he shared this message, how to better support your missionaries. I want us to look at this verse. This is a verse, or I should say this passage. This is a passage that Tom Steller actually brought to us a few years ago when he came. Beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers. And it was these brothers, these people that were traveling through, and they were strangers as they are, who testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on the journey in a manner worthy of God. John is writing and saying, thank you for showing a hospitality to these missionaries, these evangelists, these people that were sharing the gospel. He says, for these people that you're hosting, have gone out for this. They have gone out for the sake of the name. Whose name is that? The name of Jesus. Accepting nothing from the Gentiles. They weren't receiving support by those that were out there. They were being supported by people like them, and when they would come, they would lodge them in their house, even though they were strangers. And he says, but they just had got word of mouth that they were going out for the sake of his name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. We should support people like these. I want us to talk about supporting people like the missionaries we're supporting today, they are workers for the truth. And when we support them, what does this passage say we are? When we support people that go out for the sake of his name, what does the last verse of this passage, verse 8, say we are actually doing? We are fellow workers for what? For the truth. Okay, so I want to give you 7 things. They're on your sheet, so they're not surprised. You have them right there in front of you. They're the 7 points. How to get to better know your missionaries. Number 1, get to know your missionaries and let your missionaries get to know you. The reason I put Brian here in this picture, just to remind you, okay, I remember him sitting here sharing this with us, challenging. I had said, Brian, will you please share with us how to better support your missionaries? And he said to us, and I think he speaks for a lot of missionaries, get to know your missionaries and let your missionaries get to know you. Who do we know the best out of all our missionaries? It's kind of an easy answer, right? Who is it? Brian. Okay, how many of you, I love to hear who else you know, or at least to some degree, and you have conversed with. Tell me. Go. What's that? Joan Jones. Good, thank you. Who else? Okay, David Livingston. And you've reached out to him. In fact, you get WhatsApp messages from him, prayer requests. He sends us there's a group in our church called India Faith Church, and he regularly sends us, if you say, hey, I'd like to be part of that, let me know. Who else? Kyle, the Franz. Who else? You've kept in touch with Deb and Kel in Brazil, yes. Oh, Ernie and Minoka used to stay. Do you keep in touch with them or not recently? Maybe you can give them a call sometime. That'd be great. And so get to know them. May God help us, not just Brian and Heather, but but don't assume that either. They would love to hear how things are going. They would love to get a WhatsApp message or an email if you get that, and it pop up and and they would add you in their context so they know who you are, and you're just, I'm praying for you. Or send a picture of something that's going on at the church. I tell you what, that would be really encouraging to them. Send a picture to Kel and Deb, who are in Brazil. His dad planted this church. This church's heart is special to them. A closer relationship will help you better understand. Yeah, and this doesn't go, I'm not just speaking to all the adults, teenagers, young people. You can do this. This is a way in which God would want you today to start praying for and getting to know your missionaries. And Brian said, and we would love to hear from you and get to know you as well. Know what's going on in your life, how we can pray for you. It works both ways. Write them letters. Send them a message. Send it electronically. You can't, for some of these missionaries, you're really not going to send a snail mail letter anymore. In fact, where Brian is in Cameroon, they don't even get mail. Okay, second one. Share with your missionaries what is going on at your church. So most of the time, this is what Brian said, we have absolutely no idea what's going on in the life of the churches that support us. I think Brian and Heather do more here because they're involved with a lot of our message threads. They're on Realm as well, and they're connecting with us a lot better than in 2018 or 17. But even our other missionaries, you can send them, and he said it's encouraging to send them an update every once in a while. And here's the thing is, I think all of you, I really challenge all of you to take the list you got and use that as a prayer list regularly. But each of you are going to kind of connect uniquely to one or two. And that's okay. And if together you kind of build a relationship with one or two missionaries and are reaching out to them and letting them know and updating them and letting them know what's going on in our lives, that can be a real help to them. Number 3, fulfill the expectations that you have for your missionaries here at home. Okay, let's stop here for a minute. What would you expect of a missionary? So we're sending a missionary family. We're going to send the Bukowskis to Cameroon. If we were going to send the Bukowskis to Cameroon to be missionaries for the next 30 years and planting churches and starting orphanages and doing all these and helping with schools, say if we were sending them off, what kind of expectations when they go to the field would we have for them? Okay, updates. But okay, I'm thinking of like their work ethic, their walk with God, their service in the church. What kinds of expectations would we have for them? Okay, we would care that they would be discipling. Yes, Dan? Okay, they would connect locally with the church and to support that or be part of starting one. Good. What else? What other expectations would we have for missionaries in the field? I mean, we would expect them to be faithful, right? And obedient to God. What are examples of faithfulness, obedience on the mission field? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, we would expect them to report back to us. Though those are some things that we might immediately think about. I'm thinking about what would we expect about them just as Christians and as servants. Yeah, Mauricio. Okay, they should have a clear mission. Okay, but something clear and really know what they're doing and that they are pursuing that and doing that, right? Would we want our missionaries to be people that pray? Yeah. Yeah. Were you going to add something? Yes. Okay, so what was said, we want them in discipleship, in the Word, regularly reading it. So I think Brian's point is, you would expect that from us. Will you please do that too? You want to better support us? Be godly. It's kind of like, I've preached a message usually at other churches on how to support your pastor. And I'll say, the way you support your pastor is by caring about your own walk with God and loving your own church. And that is the way you support your pastor. Well, the way you support your missionaries is being the best possible member you can be at a church, walking with God, seeking the Lord. Why is that a way that blesses ultimately your missionaries? Can you think? Yeah, Dan. Okay. It's a biblical model for sustaining what? What did you say? Did I just mix your words up? Building sustainable ministry. If the home churches that are supporting are just falling apart, how does that impact the missionaries? Okay, they feel all alone, but if all the home churches just fall apart ultimately, how does that also practically impact the missionaries? It's demoralizing, but it also means they have nobody to send them anymore. What if the churches are thriving and growing spiritually, not thriving just numerically or financially, but really spiritually thriving? It's going to be an encouragement, and it's going to mean if there's true spiritual thriving in a church, it's going to mean a type of zeal for the things God cares about. So one of the ways in which we will support and help, we have expectations for our missionaries to evangelize. Do we do that here? We want our missionaries to be leaders, form leaders, to serve and volunteer and care. Are we doing that? Are we doing what we would want and expect our missionaries? Here's another one. Number 4, consider becoming physically involved in the work. Send a team, teach, disciple, and instruct. So consider becoming physically involved in the work. I loved how Mike knew we had a missionary in England, had connected with him, I believe, that summer, right? Didn't you meet Mike that summer? And he knew that his work was taking him to England, and he was going to be there over a weekend, and so he rented a car, and he drove a couple hours north on the left side of the road. Or did you take public transport? Or did you did drive? Wow. Then the roundabouts go the other way too. Wow. So Mike went to it's kind of northeast England, not to the maybe middle England. It's not the very top, but it's more, at least when we think of London, it's way outside of London. And went there. I'm wondering what you're doing at the end of summer into August next summer, but Lord willing, I'm planning to go on August 28th. I'm sorry, not August. It's actually July through, I'll scratch that out, through August 10th for about 2 weeks to do another pastors' conference. And I would love to take a team with us, and perhaps something that if God was burdening you to want to come and you were able to come, we would prayerfully consider, okay, how can we use you to serve and use your gifts while we're there, both in the church at Bethlehem, with the college and seminary, or with the pastors' conference. And if you couldn't come for the entire 2 weeks, you could come for part of it. But that's one way. And we want to work towards helping find more opportunities even closer, whether it be in Mexico or Canada or other places, that it is maybe just a little easier to go and help. Cameroon is not always easy. It definitely is a long trip. Consider becoming physically involved in the work. And you might go, I have no idea. Well, if you start connecting with them more, you might have an idea in a way in which you can be involved in that work. And if you do, please let us know. If one of you all of a sudden said, hey, Kyle Farron needs us to come for a week in Portugal to do something, and we are thinking of doing that, let us know so we can pray for you, help support and encourage you to do that. That's just an example. Okay, number 5. Please stop me if you have any questions or comments as we go, because we will run out of time. So I'm going to keep moving. Number 5, consider becoming financially involved in the work in relationship to a special project. Okay, one of the things that your gifts, the tithes that you give to this church go to support our church. They support our budget for the year. That budget includes things like keeping the heat on in this building and the mortgage. It includes the paying of staff and pastors and paying for other things that we have, but it also includes our support of missionaries. And so we praise God for that. We need you to continue to do that. And I pray that we can even do that more and better so that we can support our missionaries at a higher level. But consider, Brian said, being financially involved in the work in a special project. Let me just give you one example of a special project. Here's a message I got 2 days ago from Brian to the leaders of our church, the deacons and elders. He said this: Pastor T.D.'s family, and Mike and Jim know Pastor T.D. Because we spent time at their church. Pastor T.D.'s family is going through a great challenge right now. Having been kicked out of their home, a Muslim landlord was not happy with them using their home as a church. They're living in an unfinished church building where we actually were. The open windows, unfinished septic, and other things have created significant sickness in the family. They've been all hospitalized in the last couple of weeks. The cost is well beyond what the family can afford. And Pastor TD has already borrowed against an amount I promised at the year end to advance the ministry. His family could really use prayers and financial support. If Faith would like to come alongside them, that would be a help. That would be a help. And I asked him, I said, so what would be the need? Or what is the amount? He said, $1,000 would probably clear the hospital debts. $2,000 to $3,000 would help get the building to a safer living condition. So that would be channeled through Brian. I would have absolute assurance that it would go to him. It would go to Pastor TD because Brian would make sure it does. If you feel like you can help and would like to help, would you talk to me or Lee about that? Lee Mundy about that. And we can help with that. Number 6, challenge yourself to grow outside of the American Christian worldview. Challenge yourself to grow outside the American Christian worldview. What do you think we mean? What do you think we mean by that? Or why? What? Oh, okay. Okay. Ben? Yeah, we can be about our own personal success or gain, and we don't think about outside our little world, our little American dream. Yeah, Dan? Yeah. Right. Yes, Dan? No. Yeah, right. We're going to run out of time, and so how would you go about developing a more rounded worldview beyond just an American worldview? Okay, getting to know and talk to people that are not American, and they're actually in this region. You can. You can talk to the missionaries and ask them questions. That's another way. You can read, I would encourage you to read missionary biographies, some of which are from times of 200 or 300 years old, but they at least open your mind to, man, things are way different in other places. And how are they different? And here's the last one. This has to do with actually the cup that he's holding. Consider right-sizing your cup. You know what he meant by that? What's that? Okay. It means, Ethan said, live within your means or under your means. More under your means. Far too often, we look and we say, what is our income as a person, as your family, your personal income? Now, my income is $20,000. I have $20,000 to spend. I'm just using a round number like that. If it's a $50,000, I have that much amount, and we live our lives based on that expenses. Let me give instead of saying, what can I live on, and what has God given me so that I can actually help others? An example is Charles. I thought I had a note here. John Wesley. This is in the 1700s. By American equivalent standards, he started with a salary of about $35,000. That's not a lot, one might think. It might be a lot. Okay, but this is taking, and he says, well, by the end of his ministry, many decades later, he was bringing in an income of well into the six figures, well over 100,000, 150,000, using that equivalency in time when he was finished. But he was still living at about 35,000 salary at the end of his life because he just gave everything away. If God increased his salary, his giving, he just gave it away. He's like, I don't need this. He kept his cup small so that he could give broader. He could give more generously. Randy Alcorn, the quote that's up here, God prospers me not to raise, this is convicting to me. I hope it's convicting to all of us. God prospers me not to raise my standard of living, but to raise my standard of giving. God comes right out and tells us why he gives us more money. Most of us have more money than we need. Not all of us, I'm not saying that, but most of us, many times what we say is a need is something I want or something that's just nice. It's not a need. God comes right out and tells us why he gives us more money than we need. It's not so that we can find more ways to spend it. It's not so that we can indulge ourselves and spoil our children. And I'm not saying it's not wrong. It's not wrong to enjoy certain things and at times bless our children. It's not that we can insulate ourselves. And it's not so that we can, this is from Randy Alcorn, it's not, God did not prosper us so that we can insulate ourselves from needing God's provision. Think about that statement. God doesn't prosper us so that we can insulate ourselves so we don't need his provision. Now you say, well, that money you got in the first place was God's provision. I know. But the reality is sometimes we can think when money comes in, there's needs all over, including our brothers and sisters in this church or elsewhere. And we go, if I gave that, I won't have something for some tragedy that could come. And we have to be really careful. I want us, and maybe end with this passage. He says, this is what Jesus says, take care and be on guard against all covetousness. What's covetousness? What? Okay, wanting what others have. Often it's also very closely connected to a love of money, a wrong love of money. And greed, yes. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of riches. Jesus says, your life, be careful, be on guard against it. Americans, be on guard against covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced plentiful. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I'll do this. I will tear down my barns and I'll build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. I have 3 books here on how to support international missions. I really hope 3 of you would come up and say, man, I need to, because I need to grow in this, because I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ and I want to help our church, and I want to glorify God in this. May God help us to be better missionaries. Let's pray. Father, help us as we go to the service, as we prepare to sing and to worship through the word and prayer and fellowship as people are coming in. I pray that we'd greet them and you'd minister to us in a special way. Help us to care for, to pray and send and give to our missionaries and to love them and to partner. And would you send some of us? In Jesus' name, amen.